Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, you will learn about local notifications in Android. I do have one very old video about that in my Android Fundamentals playlist, but that is quite outdated, and I think I can explain that quite better nowadays and with more details. I will show you how to update notifications. So what we'll basically build is a basic app. You can click on a button and then a notification will show, which is simply an increment counter here. We can drag this down, and then there is an increment button. If we click that, then we basically just update that notification. So just something very basic you need in very many apps. You will learn how to do that. And I'll also show you here and there how you could customize this notification. So how you could change it, how you could maybe add an image here and things like that. But right at the beginning, I want to make clear that this is about local notifications and not about push notifications, because especially beginners often confuse these two. Push notifications are those that a server sends to a device, and that requires some more setup. That usually requires some kind of either a third-party SDK that supports that, or you use something like Firebase, FCM. But there is a lot more setup involved if you actually want to show push notifications in your app, and also if the app is actually completely closed. Here you will actually see how you can kind of just show a notification locally from within your app by, for example, clicking a button, or by just some other kind of event that fires. Could also be that you use something like Alarm Manager to show a notification. For example, if you have some kind of calendar app that a notification is shown at a specific time, but it's just not the case that the server decides when to show this notification. So before we actually jump into coding, I want to talk about a concept that is very relevant for notifications, and that is called notification channels. So whenever we actually want to send notifications or use notifications in Android apps, we need to create something called a notification channel, at least for starting from some kind of Android version. And I think it's quite an abstract concept, so I actually want to quickly talk about that here, what a notification channel is. It's basically something that summarizes related kinds of notifications, of course, and we can see these notification channels in the app settings. So if we actually minimize the app here and we hold on it, go to app info, then click on notifications, you will see we have a counter notification. So for our, this notification here, or that's not the notification, that is the so-called notification channel. And for each notification channel, the user can actually decide to toggle these notifications off. So if I don't want these counter notifications, I can turn this off, and you can see the notification disappeared. I can turn it on, and then it would reappear if I click the button again. We can click on this, and we can also give this notification channel a description, as you can see here. So this channel is used to display the current counter, so the user just knows what it's used for. If you, for example, take a look at other kinds of apps, like Instagram, we go to the app settings, go to notifications, then you see there are a bunch of more notification channels. So these are basically just kind of main categories, so for direct messages. And if we toggle this on, then we have specific notification channels for direct messages, for message requests. So we can very individually turn these off and on. If we, for example, don't want notifications just for requests, we could turn these off but leave the rest on, and things like that. So for each main category of notifications in your app, you want to create a notification channel. In our app here, we actually want to create just one notification channel for our count notification, but that's just something that is required in Android. And we typically do that we create a notification channel in our application class, which we don't have yet. So in our root package, we want to go ahead and we want to create something, my app, for example, and that will inherit from application. And in here, we want to create a notification channel in onCreate. So as soon as our application is created, that means as soon as the user starts it for the first time, or starts it in general, that will be called, so in onCreate. And here we want to have a function called, for example, create notification channel. We can press Alt Enter, create this function here, and actually implement it. As I said, that is only required from from build build version.sdk int. If that's greater than or equal to, what is it, build version codes.o from Oreo onwards, only then we actually need to create these notification channels, because before that they didn't exist. So we can say val channel is equal to notification channel, and here we need to set that up. So first of all, each channel needs an ID, which we can create a constant for example. I will do that in a separate class that we will also use to display the notifications, which I will call counter notification service. Set a class, and in here we will use a companion object to just define a constant we can access from all of our project. So for example, counter notification or counter channel ID, for example, and that can be anything, like just counter channel. That's just used to identify the channel you want to send a notification into. That's nothing that the user will actually see. Then we can go back to my app and we can pass this here. So counter notification service dot counter channel ID. The next argument will be the name. So the name of the channel, which will be counter here. And that is what you've seen in the app settings. So which basically the main category for notifications, which you can toggle on and off. And we need to pass an importance. So we can define how important notifications are that we send into this channel. So there are different levels of importance. Some of these only display if you actually long click on the app icon, and most of them actually also show in the status bar. But depending on your importance, they will of course be shown in a more prominent way to the user, like at a higher level or so. So we can say notification manager dot importance. I will choose default here. You can choose high if you have if they are very important, or low or minimum, whatever you like. So that's it for the channel. We can actually also set a description, as I said. That will be something the user will see. So we could say used for the increment counter notifications. And that is what will be displayed if the user actually goes to the app settings and clicks on your channel. And then to actually create that channel, because right now we only created the instance, but we also want to tell our actual notification manager that it should create this channel. So we first of all need to get a reference. Notification manager is get system service. We want to say context.notification service and need to cast that as a notification manager. Then we can use that to create our notification channel, where we simply pass in our channel. Make sure you actually call this here on create, and then we're actually good. We just need to go to the manifest and actually add this my app class here as a name in the application attribute. So our app actually knows that we have this application class, and it will actually use this to call and create when our app is actually launched. Cool. So now our next task is to actually write functionality that helps us to display a specific notification. For that, I want to go into the counter notification service. In a real project, I would probably write some kind of abstraction for that, like an interface that contains a function, like show notification, but I really don't want to confuse you with that stuff. It's totally fine if we just use that as a class here and rewrite a function to actually show the notification. We also want to actually have a private val context in the constructor, since we again need to get access to the notification manager, which we need to show the notification, just like here. So we also need this get system service function, which we can only get if we have the context. Here in the my app class, the context already comes from this application, but in our counter notification service, that doesn't work like that. So we want to show the notification with a specific counter. And in here, what we'll do is we will basically just create that notification. So val notification is equal to notification compat dot builder. And here we need to pass the context on the one hand, and on the other hand, we need to pass our channel ID, so it knows in which channel we actually want to send the specific notification we create here, which is our counter channel ID. And now, just with a normal builder pattern here, we can customize this notification. So for example, we can set a small icon, which we actually need to do for every notification, which we can do by simply specifying a drawable resource. So we can go to our RAS folder, drawable, right click, and we create a new vector asset. I will choose my favorite icon here, which is the baby changing station, which probably only gets used here in my tutorials, nowhere else. We can click next and finish. And I think it always messes up this tint here because there is no tint attribute, no color control normal attribute in our themes file. So we can just remove this. Maybe that is not the case for you, but you're totally fine removing this. You can close this and we can set this icon here to our small icon. So our IC baseline baby changing station. Then what else can we set here? We can set the content text. Actually, is it content title? Let's start with the title first, which is, well, the title of our notification. So we can just say increment counter, for example. And then we can set the content text, which is the description of the notification, to the counter, or the count is counter. Just like that. So whatever we pass for the counter here, we will set the description according to that. And there are, of course, a lot more things you could set up here. One thing that I want to show you, or that I just want to demonstrate or tell you that this exists, is set style. So if you have been using an Android device for quite some time, then you will know different types of notifications. We will only create a very basic one that displays some text and contains an action button to actually increment our counter. But there are, of course, also, for example, notifications that display like a chat history. There are notifications that display an image, which you can basically drag down and actually see the full image. There are notifications for music players with like go to the next song, play, pause, and stuff like that. And if you want such a more specific notification for your use case, then you can use the set style function here to actually define the style. For example, I think it's big text style. Yeah, that's, for example, a style that is used for example, for emails. So if you have the Gmail app, then you usually get a little preview of an email you got, but you can drag it down to actually see a lot more from that email. So that would be this big text style notification. And there are a lot more of these specific types of notifications you can all see in the Android documentation. But I just find it important to mention this, that there are these different types of notifications you can actually use here. But something you pretty much always want is you want to define something that should happen when the user actually clicks on the notification, because usually you either want to launch your app, so the user actually gets to your app. Sometimes you want to do some other kind of action. So how does that work? And that is a whole nother concept here that we need to talk about, which is called pending intents. So you might be familiar with intents already. An intent is basically kind of a package that defines an intention of the user or of whatever you want to do. For example, it has a specific action. You can put in some specific data like an ID or whatever, and then send that intent to some kind of component of your or of another app. And we can define that here. For example, our activity intent, create a new intent, pass in our context and pass in our main activity, which we want to launch. And then we can go ahead and say set content intent. And that is basically the intent that will be sent when the user clicks on the notification. And you can see it takes a pending intent. And we right now only created a normal intent. So we can't pass our activity intent here because that is not a pending intent. A pending intent is kind of a wrapper around a normal intent that kind of allows an outside application or an outside framework, you can say, which would be the notification manager, to execute some code of your app and actually send that intent to your app. So what we can do is we can say val activity pending intent is equal to pending intent dot get activity. So you see we have different options here. We have get activity, we have get broadcast, we have get service. So depending on which component you want to trigger when the user clicks on the notification, you want to use something different here. If you want to send the intent to a service, you would use get service. To a foreground service, you can use get foreground service. But since we want to launch our activity and send that intent to activity, we use get activity. And that now takes some Parameters, the context at first, the request code, that's basically just something Android will use to kind of identify the specific pending intent. I'll just pick one here, the intent that we actually want to send, which is our activity intent. And we can define some flags. Let me first of all specify that here, and then I will talk about that. So we first of all want to check if the build version SDK int is actually greater than build version codes M. And then we want to add the pending intent flag immutable, and else we don't want to specify any flags. So what are these flags used for? Well, they define what should be done with that pending intent in the end. So for example, if we take a look here, there are also some other flags like flag update current. That means if you already sent such a pending intent with the same request code and the same kind of data, and you use this flag update current and then send another intent, which again has the same request code, it will simply update the current intent. But you could also, for example, send an intent with the same request code and actually cancel the currently sent intent. And there are a lot more of these flags that just specify how you want to treat it, or how this pending intent should be treated by the system. We need to use flag immutable here, because if we don't do this, we actually get a warning and our app will crash. Since starting from Android, I think API level 31 or so, the pending intents actually need to have either the flag immutable or flag mutable. Usually you want to pick flag immutable, which just means that the whatever receives this intent cannot directly manipulate that intent, which I really don't want to over confuse you with here. Usually you're totally fine using this flag, just attach it to your intent and then you're good. Now, since we created that, we can also pass it here to set content intent. And now that works. So now if we would click on the notification that we will show, we would actually get to the activity. What's next? Next is that we actually want to add some kind of action. As I showed you, we want to have a button increment, and we click on that. We want to increment our counter. So how does that work? Well, we can say add action. And if we take a look here, that takes an icon, which I actually don't know where it displays that. Definitely not in the notification. Maybe on some kind of special device, like maybe tablets or so. I don't know about that actually. But yeah, we need to provide that. We need to provide a title, which is the text of the button. Let's actually just, I'll just pass my baby changing station again for the icon. And the title will be increment. And as you can see, we again need to pass a pending intent. So for the content intent, it was pretty clear what we needed to do since we wanted to launch our activity. So we just use get activity and pass this intent. But now what we want to do is we actually want to have a counter variable in our app. And when the user clicks on that, we want to increase that counter variable. And it's not as easy as like just passing a callback here and saying like counter plus plus. It doesn't work like that. Instead, we again need to specify a pending intent that we send to a component of our app, and that component needs to increment our counter. And the easiest way that can be done is using something called a broadcast receiver. So you can kind of see this action as sending a broadcast, sending some kind of event, which this receiver can actually receive and then trigger some kind of code in our app. So to do that, I actually want to go to a root package and first of all create a counter object, which is simply a singleton that contains the counter value. So we can easily access this from all of our app. And then we want to go ahead and say counter notification broadcast, or just counter notification receiver, which will be a broadcast receiver. You can see we actually need to implement a function which is called onReceive here, which will be triggered when this specific receiver actually receives the pending intent we fire. We can rename these fields here, first of all, and we can rename this intent. And in here, we actually want to increment our counter and update our notification. So we can create an instance of our notification service, counter notification service, because that's what we use to actually show and update a notification. We pass the context Actually, let's make this non-nullable. That will not be null here. And then we can use this service to show a notification. And here we need to pass our new counter. So we can simply increment our counter.value and pass the incremented value to our show notification function. And that's actually how it works to update an existing notification. We just call show notification again here. And later we need to make sure that the ID of this notification is actually the same of the notification we use when we want to update that. So that's how Android will actually kind of realize if we want to update an existing notification or if we want to show a new notification. In that case, we would need to create a new ID. But here in this class, since it's all about the same notification, we actually want to pass the same ID. But we will get to this point here later in this function. So we can go ahead and say val increment intent, for example. Here we actually create a pending intent again. And this time we say get broadcast because we want to send this to our broadcast receiver. So we say get broadcast. Again, pass in our context, give it a different request code than our other intent here. So these two can be distinguished. And we create an intent, which we create using our context and our counter notification receiver class. And then we can again include this line here for the flags. And we are good. So now we take this increment pending intent and pass it to our action. And since that will then be fired, it will trigger our counter notification receiver. It will trigger this onReceive function. And here that will trigger our show notification function again with our updated counter value. Something we need to make sure if we create a broadcast receiver is we need to go to our manifest and actually register that here, right below this activity, by using a new receiver tag here and adding our counter notification receiver. Cool. Then back in our service, we now created this notification. There are, of course, more ways to customize this. There is also, for example, set ongoing, which you might want to use. Then the user wouldn't be able to swipe this away, which you might know from some apps. And yeah, there is a lot to experiment with. You can set a sound. I think you can also set some kind of light somewhere. So if the device actually supports a specific, actually has an LED light which will blink, you can also set the color of that. You can set a number if you have some kind of chat, for example, and you say there are 5 more chat messages you haven't read. There's a large icon and there's a lot more to experiment with. And yeah, I highly encourage you to do that, to actually just try out what you can do here. I will just cover the basics here. After add action, we can call that build. And now we need to take this notification and simply pass it to our notification manager. So we actually haven't gotten an instance of that yet. We can simply get that here. Private val notification manager is context get system service context dot notification service as notification manager, like that. Then we scroll down and we say notification manager that notify, that's the function that will actually show the notification. And as I said, we actually need to pass an ID here of the notification. I'll just pick one. You just need to make sure if you want to update that notification, you need to use the same ID. Since we only use one notification here, using one as the ID will always refer to the same notification. But if you show multiple, you actually need a way to actually reference the specific notification you want to update. So if we have one, then simply pass the notification here. And I think that is pretty much it. We of course need to go to our main activity. And in here, we want to simply have a box. If you use XML, simply add a button and an on-click listener. We can say fill max size and just add a button here. When we click this button, we want to actually have our notification manager here. Actually, our notification service, let's just call it service. is counter notification service. Pass in, let's actually use the application context here. And when we click on our button here and on click, we want to say service show notification with our counter.value. We can give this button a little text of, let's say, show notification. And that should pretty much be it. If we now launch this on my device and switch back to that device, wait until the build is actually finished, and we actually hope that everything is going well. Looks like that. It's launching. Okay, I didn't center it, but doesn't matter. If we click this show notification button, then you can see there is our notification. It says the count is 0, and if we click increment, then we can actually increment that counter. So I hope that got clear. I think especially the stuff with the pending intents is or can be quite confusing as a beginner. Again, it's just kind of a wrapper around a normal intent that the notification manager will use to actually send to some component of your app. And the component can be an activity, can be a broadcast, can be a service, can be a foreground service or something similar, which then will receive this intent that you pass to the pending intent or this intent, and actually do something with that. If you would want to attach some kind of data to that intent, you send, for example, to the broadcast receiver, you could also do that here using .apply, and then, using put extra, you can say my extra, and for example, attach some kind of value like any integer or string, and then that would be attached to this intent, which will be sent to the receiver. And here you get a reference to this intent as well. So you could, retrieve that extra again. That is how you would attach some kind of data. I hope that helped you to understand notifications on Android a little bit better. If so, and you are not a subscriber of this channel yet, then I would be very happy about having you as a new subscriber, so we can maybe reach the 100,000 subscribers at the end of this year. That would be amazing. Other than that, I wish you an amazing rest of the week. Enjoy your day and see you back in the next video. Bye bye.